Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Flower Power Live. Today is January 24th, 2022. Today, our plant is cattail, also known as bulrush, punks, corn dog plant, and I suppose if you're from where I'm from, you might actually call it a pronto pup plant. Does anybody else call corn dogs pronto pups? Where I grew up, that's what we called them. But today is the day for cattail. So thank you for joining me. My name is Allison from the Well Cultivated Life, and I love sharing all this cool knowledge with you. So common cattail, which is Typha latifolia, is obviously the most common cattail in North America, although it does grow around pretty much in all the different sort of temperate latitudes around the world. It likes to grow in marshes or lakes or ponds where there's more slow moving water. You won't find it in a river or a stream. And it is a rhizomous plant, which means it has this long uh, roots and then a rhizome that it sends out along under the soil and then shoots up another plant. I think we talked about that when we were talking about turmeric not too long ago. So rhizomes can be somewhat aggressive, is what cattail. I always thought it was considered an endangered plant, but apparently it's an aggressive plant. Now, you wouldn't call this an invasive plant because invasive means usually that it's not native to the area, and cattail is native to the United States, the North America. But it is what they found is that there's several different varieties, and when they cross with each other, tends to make a more vigorous and aggressive plant. And so, in some areas, they're even trying to control and eradicate it. However, it has a lot of good benefits for ponds and the areas where it grows because it's what's called a biotoxin accumulator. So it can take up toxic contents that are in the pond or the water and therefore create a cleaner environment for all of the other plants growing there. So sometimes we don't really, probably most of the time, humans, we don't really understand the full ecological picture of a particular plant. And I couldn't help but think, well, maybe part of the actual um, ecological cycle of this plant is that there is an omnivore that is supposed to be kind of eating and using and keeping this plant under check. And that omnivore would be us humans. Evidence of cattail has been seen going back 30,000 or more years before the present. You know, way back in time, they found it in caves. And so there is a long, long history of use by humans. And this is because the cattail, and I chose cattail because it's a plant I could actually get. Here is a cattail seed head, and this is what we're mostly familiar with. Now, if I go like this, I will keep going up and up and up, and this isn't even the whole stalk. These are very tall plants. So you can imagine that these long, relatively rigid stems could be used for a lot of things. And the seed turns into, when it starts to release, it turns into this fluffy down, which was collected for bedding and it's starting to come off now, bedding and all different kinds of, stuffing pillows and that sort of a thing. So that's what we're used to seeing. But one of the things, let me show you, I got my fancy slides today. So here is some cattail growing out in with the seed heads. But one of the things that it's very popular for, or that humans like to use it for, is for collecting the cattail pollen in the springtime. And with indigenous tribes, in a lot of tribes, this had more of a like a ritualistic, used in different types of rituals. And so you can go out, and as you can see here, this top part is the male part of the plant. So that's releasing the pollen, and then the what turns into this brown corn dog looking thing is the female part of the plant, the ovaries. And so you can go out and shake the pollen into a jar or a bag to collect it, and it's super nutritious. And I haven't had it, but apparently it's very delicious and beautiful as well. Now, that can be a bit of a task for people, unless you're like super hardcore wildcrafter. So, one of my favorite people, wild wild harvester people from this area, Arthur Haynes, he recommends that you simply just go out and you snap off the entire top, leaving the lower part of the stem there. Now, as you can see, once the flowers are gone, you'll see this little, I don't know, I think it looks like a little narwhal little piece. So that shows where the pollen flowers were before. So that is another option for collecting the pollen. And again, you can use it in all kinds of things. It's filled with, calcium and iron and phosphorus and all kinds of good nutrients and who knows what else. One of my favorite books by Yule Gibbons, Stalking the Wild Asparagus. He calls it the supermarket of the wild. And so that's just because it has so much that it provides. Now, one of the important things is before you go harvesting, especially if you're going to be digging up roots, you want to make sure that you get the proper identification because there are plants that look similar and grow in the same area as the same environment as cattail, and they are poisonous, and that is irises. So you do not want to be digging up iris roots thinking that you have cattail roots when in fact you don't. So with any wildcrafting, you always want to be super careful about what it is you are collecting and have a 100% positive identification. Now, you would want to dig up the roots, and let me see. I do have a picture of those. And this is the rhizome sticking out here, and then the little side, those are roots, and this is the rhizome. So this lower part plus the rhizome are all edible, and in fact, that was one of the main parts of the plant that was used medicinally by native peoples, including using it mostly for wound healing. You could dry it, or you could crush it up and make a poultice out of it for any kind of sort of skin disturbances and irritations. And one more important thing to think about when wild harvesting is, of course, where are you harvesting? As I said earlier, this plant bioaccumulates toxins, so you don't want to be gathering from a place that's not clean because otherwise you're going to end up with those toxins. Make sure you're going and you're gathering from a very clean location. Now, the flower essence, I wasn't sure. Is there a flower essence? You never know. But there was a flower essence from Alaskan Essences. And this particular essence is for people who have become somewhat weakened because they're making connections or getting involved with things that are not really true to their true, authentic self. They're allowing themselves to be a part of things that they're really should not be doing, and therefore they feel somewhat unsupported and they're not really well connected. So what this essence does is not only does it help you to identify what your personal truth is, what your true path is, but also it sort of like helps you to draw on that inner strength to get aligned and implement this as well. So our card for today is from the Herbcrafter's Oracle deck, and it is the Six of Air. And these 6 cards are all about the bounty, magic, and power of community. But this relates in a way to our flower essence. It says on the card that you need to question your assumptions, gain clarity through articulating your visions in writing, and support others in setting intentions for change. Now, just as the flower essence was saying, you really need to get clarity. You need to figure out who you're really supposed to be. What is your true self? then this is asking you, adjust your expectations a little bit and change the way you think so that you can figure out who you are. And the card shows a table here with some paper, and there's crow, owl, and heron feathers that are gathered in glasses, and they have a jar of walnut ink. And they're going to be gathering around there to make uh, prayer petitions with friends. And the paper is, of course, made from cattail. I didn't tell you that. You can also make a paper um, out of the reeds. So friends are getting ready. They're going to come together. They're going to create these prayers and intentions together. And this is a ritual practice that's shared in community with other people. Now, cattail is a super community minded plant. And so it provides for people, animals, it provides for the land. It has, it'll come in and clean up an area if needed. And so we need our communities. And the thing is that our community only works if everybody is sort of doing their part. And this is another reason why it is so important to be living into like your real truth, because you need to bring that authenticity into the circles that you are a part of. Otherwise, there's kind of a role that's not filled, or things don't feel quite right. So sometimes when we look at ourselves through the eyes of other people, we can see kind of like, what is our role? How are we connecting with others within a group? And a lot of times that can give us some good insight into whether or not that seems right for us. And so don't be afraid to look at that. How you show up for other people is most of the time a reflection of how you're showing up for yourself. Are you giving? Are you participating? Are you listening? Are you um, being supportive? So this week, just take a look at your whether you feel like you're living your truth. So that's our message from Cattail tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've ever used cattail, or you have any growing near you, or you want to share your thoughts about cattail, just comment down below. I'd love to hear your experience with cattail. So I will see you again next week for another Flower Power Live. Have a great week, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.